My name is Aaron Beatley. You can read what's on the screen if you want, but basically what I get to do is I have what I think is the best job in the world. I train physical education teachers at the University of Kentucky and also work with writing and things of that nature. And part of that helping make teachers better is getting to work with teachers like you who are already working in the field and looking to become better educators. And that's where my role in this course and working with FAYS on this comes to play. Having said that, the first mentee will be coming up, and we want to find out a little bit about, and then you can look through some of the others of what is said, but what is your professional learning priority in physical education? So take the time to go to the mentee. If you haven't done that yet, you can use that. I wanted to do this just to see where you all are, but also so you can see where your colleagues are. And I think this is an important exercise as we start to move forward and to look at what we're trying to do with this course. So as we head back to the PowerPoint, this is what we're trying to do. So this is some details on the pre-conference, and Justin can help me out with this, but we're piloting this, and it's a chance to be the pioneer in this whole process. On 2 days before the FAYS conference, we're going to have a pre-conference 2-day workshop, and I'll detail what the workshop is going to look like and exactly what the 2 days would look like as well. But what we're going to do tonight or this morning or evening, whenever you're listening to this, is to provide those details so you can have some kind of idea of what we're trying to do and what we're going to be doing while you're at this certificate. And what is the workshop versus what is the workshop versus the certificate? And we'll detail this and give you exactly knowing, so you can know exactly what to expect when you come to this, if you choose to come to it. So a little bit of background on this. So how this came about is I've done workshops before, and teachers always ask, can they get some kind of certificate of attendance to show they went to the conference? And so I approached this topic with Justin, and I had a group of professionals come together to really get us, because we didn't want to come about this and say, this is what we think it should be. So we had a group come together and we did a couple different murals, if you're familiar with murals, to look at what this group of professionals that some were administrators, mostly were physical educators, some other professors as well, to say, what would a course like this or a certificate like this look like, and what would the content be? How should it be presented? And what we came up with is that it should be some type of a foundational course, and foundational course in the sense of a foundational course for the certificate, not necessarily the traditional, if you went to a uni and the foundational course of physical education, although a lot of the content will be very similar to that, as we'll talk tonight. But I think there's additions to that, in that I think the opportunity to network and push thinking, as well as provide foundational thinking for newer teachers. And that's what aspiring to experienced means, is as we put this course together, our probably the number one intent, and what came up with this development, we had that some focus group that to discuss with the murals, was that we want this to be something for a brand new teacher that comes into a school and has very little experience teaching, and an experienced teacher that has been teaching 20 years. And we don't want an experienced teacher to teaching 20 years to think, I've learned it all. I know what I'm doing. We want to be that meshing. And there's an old saying that good teachers know everything and master teachers are always looking to learn. And that's who we've targeted with the experience. We'll challenge the thinking of a first-year teacher as well as a 20-year teacher, and push their thinking and push them forward, and push their practice and their planning and their assessment forward in a manner to help them, again, push their practice with an ultimate eye to helping students make decisions about physical activity, and helping them on a journey of making physical activity a part of their life that truly matters to them throughout their life. So the next slide leads me to another mentee. So if you look at this mentee, you get, I'll challenge you, get 3 words. So if you go and put your 3 words, I think this will make a word cloud. But what is learning to you? This is something we don't think about much in physical education. If I say learning to you, what does that mean? And you get 3 words, and we'll give you about a minute or so to start populating this and put some words in here and watch it. We have one person's already have it in there, challenging, fun, engaging. That I think is important for us is to think about this, because as educators, we're educators. This is the foundation of what we do. And when we think about this is an important piece, what is learning? And as some of you are probably putting together, if you're familiar with the Common Ground Collaborative with Kevin Bartlett and colleagues, that this is a foundational question to what we do as educators and how we want to educate. Okay, if you educate, you have to say they're going to learn. If you want to say that students are going to learn, what is learning and how does that relate to what we want to do? So the foundational part of this, and again, challenging the thinking during the certificate, it will be an in-depth discussion of what is learning. We'll do a variety of activities and have all the teachers and all the participants come together with their definitions, working maybe a little bit. It depends on the environment and what we have, working with AI to put your words in or see if we can come up with a definition. Maybe a group definition doesn't mean what you have to use, but to see exactly what we think as we move forward for 2 days, what learning is and in the educational experience. So the next bit of the workshop will be related to content. And so this kind of, again, going with some of Kevin Bartlett's work, is what is learning, and then this is what's really worth learning in physical education. And how do we define that? And do we say the skills are worth learning? Is it just the knowledge? Is it dispositions and attitudes and values? And opening up discussions on this, I think, is extremely important for all levels of educators. Again, as foundational, what is the true definition? What do we really want to teach? And what is worth learning? What is important for students to know? And as we consider that, the content in physical education and looking at that, I'm going to head to another Menti, which looks at, you're going to have the chance here. This was a fun one. We're going to give you a minute or two to do this. You have $100 and you get to spend it in any different curricular area. So you're going to determine what content is worth learning with this. All the pressure's on you right now. So if we look at this and we think of what is worth learning, what you're suggesting here, at least as I'm getting ready to say this, is that physical health and wellness is what's worth learning in physical education. And then the second would be sports and games. The beauty of physical education is we don't necessarily have to decide one way or the other. And that's what we'll talk about. We'll talk about the variety of and different approaches and different philosophies that you may have been exposed to. Some may be totally different, new innovative ways of thinking that you've never thought of as a physical education teacher, which does nothing but push your practice and push you forward in how you think about what physical education should be teaching and what students you want students to learn. When they leave your program, this is what they learn. They learn about physical health and wellness, or they learn social and emotional development, or they learn cognitive development. And schools have different emphasis, and we have different thoughts as educators. And when you come to a workshop like this, I think it's important to really discuss that, because we'll talk about the pedagogy and how to teach, but what are we teaching is an equally important piece of this. So if we head back to the PowerPoint in the next, this one is fascinating to me. I have a good colleague of mine, Luther Rock from TASM, has looked at it and does some work with this, and I've borrowed some of his activities. This part of the 2 days will be you get to look at you and start to see, what do I value as a human being, which most of us don't sit around and think about that, but it's an important piece, because what you value as a human being will undoubtedly be probably related to what you value as a physical education teacher. And those two pieces are important, not only for you to understand yourself, but I hope how I present workshops like this is that the practices that we use during the workshop to educate and to present materials are things that you can do as educators. When I tell you I give you a list of 100 different values and you pick 5 values that are the most important to you, that's something you can do with your students as well and help them co-create the expectations in your classroom. And we'll talk about those types of how you co-create environments and help students understand the environment. But specific to this right now, related to content and who you are as a teacher, it's what do you value as a human being? So we think about that, and we'll get a chance to interact and hear other colleagues. Again, think about this. You're going to be with colleagues from around the world that have grown up in different cultures and different values, and you'll have a chance to dialect and discuss those. And then the next piece is, what PE concepts do you value? And then the next piece of that is a systematic, we'll use a tool that really looks at what you value as a physical educator, and use that as foundational information. So far in the over the course of the 2 days, we'll start with what is learning, what's worth learning, then who am I as a teacher, and then we'll get to the next one that talks a little bit about the environment. So who are you as a teacher? So that's all great information. But knowing who you are and having the best content in the world doesn't amount to anything if you don't have an appropriate environment for learning. And those of you that have seen me present or have been around me presenting, you know that I'm a firm believer that the protocol of the management, the environment that we create, that's a safe environment for students physically and emotionally, that they can try new activities, that they know what to expect, is so important. And it's so important to me that when I teach university classes on this, I spend about half of the first class students have with me, and we only discuss the environment. Who are you as a teacher? What are you trying to do? That's all we discuss. And I think this is so pivotal. And it's a topic that most of us, I don't want to say we blow it off, but I think we just think, oh yeah, I do that. And we don't step back and say, do I really do that? Or do I just think, am I comfortable in the environment? You're the adult and running the show. So how do we make all and help all students become environment? And this is a lot of where, well, I guess a lot of what I've talked about, where student voice comes in, advocacy, student choice, all of that comes in. And that's a part of a lot of this. When you have a certificate and a workshop and an opportunity like this to spend 2 days just thinking about this, and wow, I never really thought about that. Like, why does it always take 10 minutes to get kids and partners? Or why does it take me 5 minutes to get kids to stand on a line? These are very simple things that some of you are thinking, oh, I can do that. Time it, see how long it takes, and we can move through that. But I think this is a really pivotal. And during the 2 day workshop, this piece will be entirely done in a gym, taking you through as if you're a student. There'll be equipment around. You will be treated like I would treat students, and we'll move through different phases of management, how you address behavior issues. What are the root of behavior issues? We'll talk about that, and really focusing on students, because we want this to be a positive environment, a safe environment for students, because we're trying to get students to want to be active. And if we want students to be active, we really have to focus on the environment that we're creating, because it's going to we're going to be making decisions about physical activity based on the environment that we create. So that's the last one P. And then this is one that a lot of you mentioned when we talked about the first Menti that we had with assessment and physical education. We'll talk a lot about assessment, and we'll talk about what drives assessment, how what you value. This will probably be presented on the second day. I'll talk about that in a second. But what you say you value on the first day, how does that impact your assessment? And who's in charge of the assessment? Do you pick what's assessed, or do your students get to pick assessed? And then if the students get to pick, do you pick the outcome that's assessed, or are students helping develop the outcome and looking at how they want to be measured? And what are assessments that we can use? What are the different assessments? Are there teacher checklists, teacher questioning? Are we talking self-assessment, peer assessment? We have an assessment that I use called Bike Racks, with a website that I help with called Dynamic PE ASAP, that some of you have heard of. So there's a lot to be looked at with assessment, and the idea of assessment being, it has to be educative. Assessment has to improve your instruction and has to help students learn. Those two we're not doing it just because we have to do it. The principal said we have to do it, so we're doing assessment. No, we're doing assessment to help our teaching and to help students learn. And we'll use that as the foundation of what we're trying to talk about with assessment, and really digging into that and discussing it. You'll have the chance to talk to your peers about what are they using for assessing. Some of you are in an IB school, and so you'll get to talk. Some of you are at a school that has a British curriculum. So what are you using for assessments, and how do you address that? So you have that opportunity and hear other people as well as those in similar environments to you. And then the last slide, this is a little bit about kind of a foundation. It's what I just talked about, but to get you to see how this day will be, how the days will be spread out. We'll talk a lot. We'll get to know each other, those types of things. But the learning in physical education, we'll spend some time on that because we're going to talk about what is learning, then what is learning in physical education. We'll spend some time figuring, okay, if we know this is learning, how are we going to create an environment so that can happen? And if we've got this environment that's created, now we can start talking about content and shape standards, or the British standards, or the Canadian, or wherever you are, or maybe you have some other standards or some other outcomes that you've worked on your school and you've created, and encourage you. We will encourage you to bring that kind of stuff to have access to. And so that will be day one. Day two, we'll move in. We'll start off with some activity on best practices, talk a little bit about motivation and during this time, and meaningfulness, and how do we, again, back to the how do we create the environment? How do we focus on the process? How do we let students have voice and advocacy and put students in charge without, because when I say that, I can guarantee some of you are thinking, how do you get students, and you're gonna let students make choices? Yeah, and I think we have to let students know that we trust them and that we think they can make, and we have to teach them about this, and we have to convey that, and we'll talk a lot about that. We'll spend some time talking about assessment, and then that leads, right, as I said earlier, about your environment and where you are, your school. That leads specifically into learning a little bit more about international schools and what physical education looks like at different schools. And so you'll have a chance to meet more with your colleagues and discuss these ideas and these prompts, and what is what it means, and is it, you're in an IB school or you're in an American school, and so what does that look like for you with physical education? Or you're in an international school with 1,300 students, and I'm in an international school with 300 students. What are the similarities and the differences? And hear about that. And a big piece of this last meet will be to discuss and try and figure out kind of we call them a professional learning community, but to get contacts and create a cadre of people that you can communicate with, that have this similar understanding, and you can have this dialogue, because we don't want you to leave this certificate workshop with just yourself. We want you to leave with a colleague and colleagues and groups of teachers that you can communicate with, and continue to make yourself better after the workshop. And this is where Justin will jump in and explain a little bit about what the workshop is, and the certificate, and how we can pull that together to give you a cadre and potential for other workshops as well.
Sure. So the way that we've set this up, and we actually have done some courses already through Phase, and we have a health workshop and certification we do. And the whole principle behind this is that you attend the 2-day workshop, you've got that kind of core understanding, you've got that cadre, as Aaron, and for that you'll get a certificate of attendance. If you want to pursue the certification and having the badge that you see on the screen, and a badge you can add to your LinkedIn, to your CV, then there'll be a post-event online component where you will have some sort of job embedded activity or task. So we don't want it to be just an exercise, write a paper. We want this to be something that you're really bringing into your professional practice. We anticipate that this would last somewhere between 5 to 10 hours to complete. And then you'll submit that to Aaron and have a brief call to discuss what you did. And then you'll either pass or not pass the certification component. But of course, we want everyone to be successful as much as we can possibly be. So that's how we're structured it. So it's a workshop that leads to a certification, if you so choose to pursue the certification. Anything you want to add there, Aaron?
No, I think that being practical is extremely important to me. And I think that's busy work. I don't like that. So I think we have to, something that is meaningful for you as a teacher, but practical, and something that can impact your practice and your.
All teachers are busy, but I feel phys ed teachers are particularly busy, right? In terms of number of classes, number of students, commitments outside with sports coaching and so on. So we want this to be something meaningful that really is going to make a difference in your professional life.
Yes.
Okay. And then for the practical side of things, we've shared the dates already. Kelly's going to post a link in the chat to where you can find out more information about this course. We're running this as a pilot. So this is your chance to be part of the first cohort, which is pretty exciting. And so because it's the first cohort, we're offering a special price. We anticipate this will cost more in the future. So we're offering it at a $500 for the 2 days, which gets you lunch on both days, a certificate of attendance, and then $150 to if you want to pursue the certificate portion afterwards with the online learning and then submitting some work back to get the certificate. So that's the practical component. This is, as Aaron said, a 2-day pre-conference to the main phase conference, which is on the 16th and 17th. So you can choose just to do this if you like, if you want to come just for the pre-conference, or you can do the pre-conference and the main conference. So please do check out the link in the chat, and we'll of course email that around as well to everyone that registered and get connected. And I think the one thing I didn't note is, as Aaron says, that we're planning to have multiple courses. So this is a foundational course, but we will hope to have more courses that you can do in the future as well through phase to continue your professional learning.